Hello, and welcome to this session on building an interlaced security armor through the fabric of IT security services. No matter where you are tuning in from today, I'm glad to be with you all. As leaders in your organizations for cybersecurity, I trust that this session brings you timely insights to aid in your role in what are very challenging times. My name is Adam Etherington, Principal Analyst at Omdia. I am responsible for understanding trends in business-to-business cybersecurity services globally, specializing in managed and professional services that are increasingly essential for large organizations across both public and private sectors. In this role, I'm very fortunate to speak with CISOs, IT director, and executives responsible for cybersecurity in their organizations. To begin, here's a high-level view of the agenda for today. Firstly, I'll share with you Omdia's view on the most pressing IT security challenges facing organizations today, so that we might better recognize the patterns emerging in order to prioritize and address those. Secondly, we'll briefly look at where organizations globally are investing in IT security services, so any executives joining today can speed up the evaluation process, both in terms of technologies, but also service providers and partners that might assist you in that journey. And third and final, I offer a methodology and a framework to help you assess your current and future cybersecurity providers as a way to take deep insights from my Omdia colleagues' prior presentations and join the dots and move that into action. Let's get started. To begin, it's important to establish a baseline of the fundamental and universal forces in cybersecurity facing all large organizations. These have become very clear to me in conversations that I've had with CIOs recently as part of custom work, and also primary surveys that Omdia regularly runs. So what you're seeing here on screen is how the impact of COVID has changed the emphasis different organizations place on corporate priorities. And we ran this survey during the height of the first wave of the COVID pandemic in 2020. And these are the results here. So it shows that improving security, especially cybersecurity, is actually a key priority and has emerged as the number one. So for many years, IT security ranked or hovered near the top three, but rarely broke through to claim the top spot as it did in this particular study. And now let's look at a more recent study. You may be wondering if this has changed and what the priorities are now. The short answer is yes. IT security remains a crucial priority. And from what I hear talking with executives, IT security is becoming a recurring boardroom agenda item alongside corporate risk and financial prudence. On screen are the results of a more recent survey we conducted with over 200 IT and business executives. The top three priorities by region are seen here, with the blue bar representing the global priorities and purple for North America. Firstly, simplifying IT infrastructure is crucial in response to rapid uptake in cloud, remote working, and complex application portfolios. Secondly, insourcing for competitive innovation and differentiation also emerged as important. The CIOs I've spoken with, however, lament the challenges in attracting, retaining, and recruiting skilled and experienced staff within tight OpEx budgets. This has driven up demand for third-party security provider services, which I'll touch on later. But most notably, IT security is the standout priority, rising above innovation, especially for this part of the world. And here, lastly, is the more recent survey. Just before this event, we went straight to the market and we got a response from 100 executives from across the globe. We asked, to what extent has your organization's security posture maintained pace with recent changes from COVID-19? The results are on screen for you. Only 21% managed to keep pace with the rate of change that was so rapid. And 63% said, quite honestly, they have some room for improvement. So what does this mean? Well, The COVID pandemic simply accelerated a transformative shift with technology that was already underway. Now, technology underpins digital transformation and resilience, and security underpins that technology innovation. You can see how the two are tightly interlinked for the future success of any organization. What I'd like to talk to next is give you a broad sense of the challenges, the industry challenges in security, touching on some of the fantastic presentations from my Omdia colleagues. Now, what you see here on screen is 6 major challenge themes. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but a holistic view of the challenges that have emerged from my research, conversations I've had with executives, and also what I'm hearing from leading global vendors. We don't have time to explore all these in detail, but let me hit on some high points for you. The first challenge is around a broad attack surface, and this one should probably be evident. As workers moved remotely during COVID-19, whether SecOps, developers, customer support, internal planning, HR, all functions, business functions were impacted to a degree, which meant fast adoption of a distributed cloud, remote working, data sharing, collaboration, and even digitizing supply chains through APIs linking core business systems, broadening the attack surface. Secondly, we have more acute attack vectors. Attackers, whether nation states or illegal enterprises, have proven, unfortunately, that they can be very innovative. Omdia saw a significant uptick in attackers using social engineering to prey on individuals' COVID-driven anxiety through spear phishing campaigns. Their target was often a ransomware payload delivery for extortion leverage. This is very concerning, and as Tanner Johnson covered in an earlier session, ransomware targeting critical infrastructure marks these attacks as a new terrorism. More sophisticated threat actors are unfortunately now even better equipped with ready access to tactics, techniques, and procedures, and are upping their game. Recent supply chain attacks from 2 substantial software vendors are really unfortunate examples, and the impact of these attacks are still being unraveled. Third and fourth trends are 2 opposing forces. On one hand, we have budget constraints. We know from talking to CIOs, many of them have had to cut costs, and there is an additional level of scrutiny with any cost in IT, as firms that they were part of experienced deteriorating demand from economic downturns. Some industries did win, and they saw a positive uptick in demand for services, but many did not. And this has caused some very tight scrutiny on CapEx and OpEx budgets. However, at the same time, there is a mandate to innovate coming from CEOs and business leaders who have come to rely on ICT and technology to get to market faster, to deliver innovation. This innovation is infused or enabled by technology. And if we don't want IT to be the bottleneck and security to be the bottleneck, this creates additional challenges. Number 5 is leveraging new and maturing technologies. We've seen rapid growth in 5G, edge, and continued digitalization, which is creating new business models. However, these also create new security challenges. And number 6 is the challenge of how to secure and leverage these new technologies while also dealing with skill shortages in local markets within constrained budgets. Lastly, number 7, but by no means least, and I put it at the bottom underpinning all the others, each company faces different levels of regulatory compliance and requirements. Most recently, President Biden's executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity. Now, while initially directed at US federal departments and agencies and federal contractors, should not be surprised if that order's impact and resultant standards will spread across to critical infrastructure and any technology suppliers. So what's the takeaway here? Really, it's that IT security is becoming more and more important to organizations, but at the same time, it's becoming more and more complex. Now, the industry has responded. So let's look briefly at another subtle change, and that is, another subtle challenge, and that is around a lot of hype and a lot of noise. So in this complexity we've just talked about, service providers are investing in solutions. On screen are some very common topics, tools, technologies, and methods that address different aspects of these cybersecurity challenges. Some of these are readily available, some are in development. Some get a lot of hype and a lot of noise from the media. Others are overlooked or perhaps even oversimplified. Now, the greater availability of all of these to address particular pain points, and that they are certainly valid, unfortunately creates a more subtle challenge for IT leaders. How do you know what is most important and relevant to your organization, and why? For instance, zero trust, we hear a lot about it. It's actually not a tool, and it has practical implications for remote workers. And ransomware, which we hear a lot about, is genuinely a scourge that requires a coordinated response across multiple areas, many of which are mentioned here on screen. We don't have time to mention and talk to these in detail. Fortunately, my Omdia colleagues have done a brilliant job in tackling them in prior sessions. Just to touch on a couple, because of the interest of time. However, they're all fantastic sessions that you should review. So firstly, Maxine, the Director of Security, in her session titled Security Has Gone Haywire, Surviving and Thriving Amid Organizational Revolution, she really set the scene well in terms of the changing role of the CISO and security leaders and what this means for organizational change. Holly talked about the expanding IoT threat landscape in healthcare. Jeff talked about the evolving infrastructure security market towards cloud native. And Rick talked about zero trust. I strongly encourage you, if you have an interest in any of those and you think they may be relevant and particularly important to your organization's cybersecurity, you go and have a look at those sessions. I put them here to give them some breadth around the landscape and also suggest some questions that you may want to consider around what is the business value of each of these, depending on the nature of the threats that you're facing and the challenges. If you look across your security armor, everything from threat intelligence right through to management, where are you most exposed? Do you even know? That will help you understand which of these is the most important for the business value, not just the technology or the security value. Now, let's talk, we've talked about trends. Let's talk now about what you might look for in choosing an IT security service provider. Before this particular event, Omdia went to market and we had a survey, and there was a whole lot of different questions in there. And one of them was around the extent to which organizations use managed security service providers right now to deliver security in their organizations. But based on the results right now, approximately 50% are engaging a third-party managed provider. Around 35% are doing it themselves. And the balance, well, they weren't sure. I think this is only going to increase given the complex threat landscape we talked about, challenges around skills and certifications. And another statistic that came out of the survey we did, which is how well organizations are dealing with the rate of change. And only 21% of those we asked are managed to keep pace with the rate of change. So where are the opportunities and where are people spending money on IT security services right now? So we've heard some of the theory. Let's look at where the dollars are. On screen is a macro chart that visualizes all the reported global contracts signed in 2020, which contain security services. I sourced this from the Omdia IT Services Contracts Analysis Database and categorized the deal types into 3 areas that are emerging globally when I looked at the deals and the themes and the nature of the contracts that were signed. The quadrant size here represents the percentage of the top 20 by TCV, total contract value, excluding defense, for all IT services contracts that included security. You can see that network in light blue and IT outsourcing, systems integration deals in dark blue, which contain security, were the most lucrative by total contract value in 2020. What's interesting is the definite growth in the number of transformative deals indicated by the purple quadrant, where security was a core component of the deal. For example, digital modernization and cloud edge computing, IT modernization, and application modernization. I expect this to grow over time, as security is essential to securing transformed ICT and third parties who bring the scale, experience, and expertise to reduce the risk of transformations, lift the maturity of network modernization, and underpin application migration to multi-cloud. One other final note, when I looked at the top 20 contracts, there were no standalone managed security services deals. The quill out here is that security remains a fundamental component of larger network, IT outsourcing, and transformation deals. Having made the decision to seek outside help, perhaps from a security partner, let's turn now to how executives actually choose a partner, what they look for. In preparation for the recently released Omdia Universe on choosing a global IT security services provider, Omdia conducted a global survey to 220 IT and business execs, asking them, when you choose a vendor, how important are the following criteria? On the chart here on the screen, you can see the technology executive's response and the top ranked criteria, which is industry knowledge and innovation, followed closely by contract flexibility and delivery models. By contrast, this slide shows you the results just for the business executives, so the CEO, CFO, and Chief Operating Officer. Compared to their technology peers, business leaders place more emphasis on contract flexibility, while innovation is still very important. Interestingly, breadth and depth of expertise was ranked a distant third. The upshot of these two slides is knowing what's most important to your organization now, but also in 3 to 5 years' time, as you seek to capitalize on market opportunities, particularly given the sunk costs, the switching costs of moving workloads between clouds, changing enterprise architecture at scale, and the impact on security that might have. For example, let's bring this to home. Are you seeking a provider who has deep industry expertise and can advise you on the particular security, governance, and compliance challenges for your industry? Or are you quite mature in that way and you just need someone to help you operationalize and manage the sheer volume of alerts that are coming through for you? Is it that you need a provider who is very strong in IT security strategy and engaging with the board? Or have you already got that sorted, or that's not a massive issue for you? And again, it's around, well, you want to be much more proactive in your threat intelligence and leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning to get the jump on attackers before they get the jump on you. What you're looking for will determine where you look and what you look for in providers. To help you on this journey, we produced the Omdia Universe, and I don't have time to go through that in detail. And there's been a few webinars I've done recently, including the Black Hat Asia, where I went through in more detail on what that is, the methodology, and the insights that came out of that. I will touch on a couple of things here just to give you some guidance. So firstly, on this slide, you can see two sides. This is how we looked at the quality and the leadership of global security services providers. And when I say IT security, I mean everything from consulting and integration right through to management, or even just dropping in infrastructure and hardware before managing it around security. On the left-hand side, this represents, we actually went to the market and understood from customers their real experience with cybersecurity from these particular providers, how likely they were to recommend it, how likely they were to have a positive experience with the provider and with their security services. On the right-hand side of the chart, this is where Omdia assessed these providers' capabilities, and it's really worth taking a look at this, even if it's just a framework for what you might be looking for, because there's so many different words and descriptions and titles and names for things. There isn't necessarily a common vernacular. And so this is a really great framework for assessing providers' capabilities in fundamental areas that large organizations and governments need to address. For example, what is in threat management? What is technology security? What is in consulting integration? How do these things tie together? How do you consider and evaluate the breadth, depth, reach, and market presence? Leaders had very strong customer experience and very strong provider capabilities. However, I will mention that all the vendors that we considered in the universe are the best in the industry. If you wanted to go to more detail, you could then dig further in, and there's a vendor radar where we actually show you those two quadrants. So the left and the right are as they were before, but you can see how each provider scores against vendor experience, market presence, say against the average or against best in class. Now, this brings us to the close of today's session for me, and I wanted to leave you with 4 particular areas, critical questions to ask your provider, perhaps your current provider or your future provider. These are based on the trends that we're seeing, the conversations that I'm having with executives and providers, and what I'm seeing come out of the Omdia universe in terms of what makes a global leader. And these are just 4 suggestions. Firstly, ask them, how likely are their current cybersecurity customers to recommend them and why? This is about advocacy. It's about reference clients. When we spoke to and interviewed customers, reference clients, as part of the Omdia universe, it was really clear that there were some very strong advocates for some of these providers and the services they offer. And you can really get a sense of the trust that they have in them. Secondly, how integrated are their solutions? Now, I recognize that not everyone wants to buy a full end-to-end suite of services. Maybe you just want to buy an endpoint detection and response or an XDR that brings together the network and the endpoint as well, along with cloud security. Or maybe you are after something that is more comprehensive and ties together proactive threat intelligence, AI and ML that takes those and generates insights out of that, and then the ability to have playbooks and respond to that in particular industry context, and then bringing consultants to help if you need to tune up or rapidly progress particular areas of your cybersecurity to deal with that posture and that rate of change we've talked about. That is a more full suite of services. Look at how integrated their solutions are as well, because as you change, you don't want to be buying one tool from one vendor and then needing to go to a completely different vendor and then trying to get the two to work together. Thirdly, look at their cybersecurity roadmap. How clear and compelling is it? And this is around where they are at the moment and where your organization is and where they can work with you to take you in the future as your organization adapts and becomes more innovative. Look at their investments. And this then comes to the 4th point on their maturing capabilities. These vendors are investing billions in particular cloud security and other security products, and they're advancing rapidly. So it's really important to stay on top of these. And Omdia can help in this regard by looking at say something around next generation firewall, multi-cloud management, and the level of maturity and the rapid advancement in these. And we can help advise you on how they might suit and work within your organizations to help. So a final word of advice, which is, I think there's going to be more and more scrutiny on IT executives and security executives, particularly from the board, because of the importance of resilience. We've seen threats, we've seen attacks, we've seen breaches, we're seeing much higher levels of compliance required and regulation. And I think now is the time to be proactive and take a fresh look, particularly as things have changed so much with COVID, around how is your organization placed? Do you have any particular gaps in your armor that might need a fresh look? Maybe you need to bring in a third party to help you. I really appreciate that you've joined this session, and I hope it's been very insightful for you. Please stay safe.